Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Divine Nine Leadership Roundtable. History is being made as for the first time, all presidents of the Black Greek sororities and fraternities are coming together for a united front to inform, empower, and activate our community for this upcoming election season. 9 organizations, 9 leaders, 1 voice. Hosted by news and media maven Sybil Wilkes, with discussions led by Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated General President Dr. Everett B. Ward, PhD, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated International President Dr. Glenda Baskin Glover, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated Grand Polomarch Reuben A. Shelton III, Esquire, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated Grand Basilisk Dr. David Marion, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated National President and CEO Beverly E. Smith, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated International President Micheal E. Cristal, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated International President Valerie Hollingsworth Baker, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated International Grand Basilisk Rasheeda Liberty, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated International Grand Polaris Andre R. Manson, with special appearances by Roland Martin, Iana Van Zandt, Dio Hughley, Kim Whitley, J. Anthony Brown, Selena Johnson, MC Light, and Ashley Bell. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend and one of the smartest women I know, Sybil Wilkes.
He wrote that. He read that just as I wrote it. Thank you so much, John Murray. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, 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 welcome. 7 weeks from today is November 3rd. It's Election Day. And we are here today, a historic gathering at a time of great consequence to our future. 9 of the greatest leaders of our time have come here to talk strategy and create an action plan for the next 7 weeks and beyond, I dare say. The Divine Nine, living up to their name, the presidents of the Black sororities and fraternities are calling on our community to join in their efforts to strategize, educate, motivate, and activate. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let us say hello to the president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Dr. Everett Ward. President and Chief Executive Officer of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Dr. Glenda Baskin Glover. Grand Polomarch of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Reuben Shelton, Esquire. President of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Dr. David Marion. The president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Honorable Beverly Smith. President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, the Honorable Micheal Cristal. President of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the Honorable Valerie Hollingsworth Baker. And congratulations, by the way. President of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, the Honorable Rasheeda Liberty. And congratulations to you, too. And the Grand Polaris of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, the Honorable Andre Manson. Welcome to all, and thank you all so much for being a part of this historic gathering. Before we get started, I'd like to talk to those of us who are watching this afternoon and into the evening. And don't they know that you all are in the middle of making history right now with that phone going on? Just a reminder that the 2020 U.S. Census is still underway. There's still time to be counted, although there are challenges to the end date. It's currently scheduled to end September 30th. As I said, there are challenges and lawsuits that are going on now. There are 3 ways we remind you to participate in the 2020 census. Number 1 is online at 2020census.gov, iPhone at 844-330-2020, or you can do it the old-fashioned way, complete that paper questionnaire and mail it in. A reminder of just a few of the important areas that could be lost if we are not all counted. Our children. Our children could be denied funding for schools and programs, very important programs like Head Start, lunch programs, and health insurance programs. Don't forget about the money that will be designated for transportation, roads, and bridges, which not only means improvements, but jobs for people who work on those improvements to make that happen. And as we prepare to vote, a reminder that states could lose representatives in Congress if we do not stand up and be counted. Please go to 2020census.gov, G-O-V, for more information. I would like to talk to John Murray. I'm sorry, getting a little ahead of ourselves. This is all started as a result of an opportunity that I had to talk to all of the leaders of these divine organizations a few months ago. And this was as a part of our newsletter. It's called What You Need to Know. And it is, as Tom Joyner has taught us very well, that we are here to super serve the African American community. He got that from his mentor, Mr. John H. Johnson. And so with that in mind, every day we strive to put together news items that are really important to the African American community. And of course, we are talking a lot every day about politics and of course about the upcoming election. And the What You Need to Know newsletter is something that I have a very small crew of people, but we go big and we go hard every day to bring the news to our communities. And I would like for my friend John Murray to come in and talk a little bit about that as well.
Sybil Wilkes' What You Need to Know is a for us, by us newsletter, keeping us informed, empowered, and educated every day. If you just sign up, the newsletter is giving you all the things you love about Sybil from radio throughout the years and so much more. Monday through Friday, you're getting 5 big stories, a little known Black history fact, a wellness tip, information on HBCUs, shout out to Norfolk State, and you might just see your name in the birthday mentions. The newsletter is intentionally curated for the African American community to give us the news and information that's important to us. It's for the culture, y'all. So what you waiting for? Click the link in the description box below to subscribe or go to SybilWilkes.com and sign up there. So get in the know with what you need to know. I'm John Murray and I approve this message.
I approve of you, John Murray. I thank you so much once again for all your support as we are taking on this great project. And this has been a labor of great love and very little sleep as far as our doing the What You Need to Know newsletter. We have been working for just under a year. And my merry band and group of women and gentlemen have been so instrumental in making this a success. So I thank you all for that. We are here, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the 9-point plan. We are going to be talking about a variety of topics, all have to do in some form or fashion with our voting. We will talk about voter registration, early voting, the mail-in ballot, and how we can help our senior voters, election day voting, and especially talking about it in the age of the COVID-19 pandemic, working and volunteering at the polls, voter suppression and legal resources that are available. We're going to talk about the down ballot races. What does that mean? Well, there's more than one office that we are focusing on in these elections. And so we will talk about those races that are down the ballot. Activating HBCU voters, and how do we do that? And Black Lives Matter, we'll talk about that. Also, marching to the polls and the racial strife that we are undergoing. And as we have talked about in the What You Need to Know newsletter as recently as this week, Black men and voting. They are a very, very special voting bloc that Donald Trump really did very well with in 2016. And you Black men, they want you. Well, so do us Black women, but I digress. So let us go into a word from our friends. And these are some people, these are my friends, your friends, and they are people that you will recognize as they represent their fraternities and sororities.
Hi, I'm MC Light, a proud member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. I am reminding all of my sorors to make sure that you, your family, friends, and coworkers are registered to vote.
Hey everybody, yours truly, Anthony Brown, a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Incorporated, and I'm asking everybody to vote early as you can and help somebody old to the poll. Now they're going to be doing a lot of talking, and they're not going to chip in on the gas. Watch out there now.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hughley, a very, very proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and I'm asking everybody, imploring everybody, begging everybody to please remember to vote. Your vote is so very important this year. Do not forget to vote.
So thank you guys. I appreciate your participating and representing so well. And we are going to start off with President Liberty and President Shelton. And we're going to talk about voter registration. If I could just remind our presidents, and I do this with all due respect, if you are not speaking, to mute your voices there as we go through this. But let's start with you, President Liberty, and talk about what your organization is doing to encourage voter registration.
So Sigma Gamma Rho specifically has partnered with a number of organizations, but one specifically that we are really working closely with, and that's When We All Vote. And many of our Divine Nine organizations have also taken on this leadership mode as far as launching with this group. This group was launched by Michelle Obama in 2018 with several colleagues, and really around, we have a third of qualified voters who are not registered. And so we understand that the task is big, and so our partnership is around that. For our Divine Nine partners, we all understand that we need to engage in the voting process beyond a social media post, really nudging a spouse or a friend. This is really about stretching our common circle. So not the people we know, but those neighbors, a disengaged family member, or even a coworker who may not really see the importance of really taking the first step. And to me, that first step really is registering to vote. So NAACP, Rock the Vote, and other national registration day efforts really is what Sigma Gamma Rho has been behind. Mm-hmm. And even to stretch it even further, because we are on here as a Divine Nine collective, I want to talk a little bit about what Sigma Gamma Rho is doing with our partners. So we do have a partnership with Iota Phi Theta Fraternity, which is called much more than a hashtag. And that initiative has been in play beyond just this particular election year, but for a long-standing relationship between us. We also are with Project Game Over. We have a whole group of collegiates that need to get engaged. They've never voted, that age group of 18 to 22 or so. They haven't really been involved in the general election. And so we are partnering with Project Game Over 2020, a project really started by Kappa brother, Tracy McMillan, to really engage those particular people in 8 key states in registering voters.
Does anyone, thank you very much, President Liberty. And so just to kind of throw this out there for others who would like to participate, but especially looking at you, Grand Polemark of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Reuben, Shelton, what about you and in terms of what your organization is doing?
Yeah, thank you, Sybil. So in addition to working with all of our Divine Nine colleagues and partners, who are all doing some really, really wonderful things. And in addition to asking and tasking every chapter in the fraternity to conduct lives, we also have partnered with the organization When We All Vote, and they have provided us with some tremendous resources. So Kappa has agreed to focus on a couple of their target cities, Philadelphia and Phoenix. And we're going to employ brothers to do a really deep dive into the communities in those cities and ramp up voter registration and turnout as well. But additionally, we are asking for every chapter in the fraternity to register at least 10 individuals during the National Voter Registration Week, which is September 20 through the 27th. Mm-hmm. Also, individual members are encouraged to promote voter registration by posting a picture of themselves with their voter registration card and using the hashtag Kappa Men Vote. Now, this hopefully, and the goal is to serve as a visible demonstration of the power of the Black male vote on all social media platforms. So we're all into this, Sybil.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk, and if anyone wants to talk about this, and I think you have talked about this, President Liberty, but a lot of the young people that are voting for the first time, but have any of you identified specific challenges among your members in their attempts to register or to get others in their community to register to vote?
Typically, the way we have approached it in our organization is the biggest challenge is around COVID, right? 2019, that has really plagued our communities when it comes to voter registration, because we can't touch and feel those people. So what we have said is that it is important for us to engage in our civic duty, meaning the things that we typically do, whether it's going to the hairdresser, engaging at the grocery store, we are encouraged to ask those people that we work with on a regular basis and touch and feel, are you even registered to vote, right? And do you have a way to, can I give you that app? If we download the app, there's an app called Outvote, where we can actually target those contacts in our cell phone that are tied to us. And we can see how often they vote. Are they a frequent voter, infrequent voter, or never registered? And through that Outvote app, you're able to really touch and feel those people who are closest to you, and also in those circles in a safe environment as we deal with this COVID environment.
Gotcha. What about any of the other leaders here? Have you all directly had any challenges or ways to work around, especially as President Liberty has said, in terms of working around the challenge of the pandemic?
We certainly have that one, Sybil. But the main challenge that we see year in, election cycle in and election cycle out, is the lack of knowledge and really logistical support, especially for our more senior members. It's the inability to get to places where they can register, or the knowledge of how they can do it online where that is allowed. It's interesting that I just received a message from Credit Karma, which is the credit score reporting site, advertising a smooth and seamless way to register the vote. And there are other things that we need to get out to the community, to our brothers and all the communities that we serve. It's that type of information we need to get to the folks who need it, so that they are armed with the knowledge of how to register to vote.
One of the interesting things is that you all, the history of your organizations, and you have, of course, going through the generations of members that you have. And so you have those that have lived through, who are over the age of 70 and beyond, and lived through a number of important parts of our history, including Jim Crow segregation and the assassinations of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and of course, the election of our first African-American president. And now here we are with the administration of Donald Trump. They have seen firsthand a lot of these historical events that have shaped our nation. And so how does your organization use the wisdom and experience of some of your older members and your seasoned members to pass on some of this information to your youngins, to the younger members of your organizations? Anyone like to speak to that?
I can speak to that for Sigma Gamma Rho. Specifically, we have a rich culture, what we call our culture pearls. And these are our more senior members and elders of our organization. We engage them on social media. We engage them in webinars and trainings, all the way, not only from the alumni level, but all the way down to our undergraduates and our youth groups, because they have to start even at that youth level. For our rower club, we have to make sure that they're starting to see what that process looks like. We've ramped up with telling them about the election season, using them in forums on history of voting, as well as explaining what the Electoral College means. A lot of people don't even know that basic tenet when it comes down to voting. And the biggest thing is using those voices in the stories, as you stated, of why we vote. We not only vote in presidential elections, but why it's even important for us to vote on the local level, which I know we'll be addressing later on in this call.
Absolutely. I think that we're giving people a lot of good information here and talking about voter registration. And also, I'm hoping that our viewers are chiming in with their observations and perhaps even some questions as we go along here. Let's talk about the issue of early voting and what that looks like. Because Lord knows we're getting a lot of different information sources, aren't we? And folks are telling us that the mail-in ballot is not working and it's going to lead to some challenges when it comes to counting our votes, as well as disruptions in the postal system. And so let us go and talk about this. And President Cristal, let's talk about early voting and how are you talking to your members about the basics about early voting, how to vote early, how to get information on that mail-in ballot or to submit your request for a mail-in ballot. How is that discussion going, President Cristal? Unmute. President Cristal, if we could just get you to unmute and then start your response. Okay. President Cristal, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, we can now. So go back.
I had my.
No, I understand. You were following directions, and it was on me. So what about that? About getting people to vote early, and also about submitting the request for the mail-in ballot. How are you all dealing with that?
Yeah, first of all, very excited to be here this evening with my D9 colleagues. And, to your point, less than 50 days out. And, early voting is one of the options that's available. When you think about how do you connect with our members, how do we connect with the community? My thought of that is initially, wow, let's go to our website within our respective state, go on the Secretary of State's website. Here within the state of Arizona, early voting starts on October the 7th. And so it's a huge opportunity for all of our members to go there, advance within our communities for the opportunity to deliver. And, when you think about early voting, and particularly when you think about it in this COVID environment, the opportunity for safety, the opportunity to plan. The election is November the 3rd, October the 7th here in Arizona. Between that window of time, you've got an opportunity to plan for that. November the 3rd comes, who knows what you could be doing. But also when you get past just the early voting and you start thinking about the mail-in ballot, there's a whole lot been in the news. That's a whole lot been happening in that regard. And there's a tremendous amount of websites that are available. One of the ones, and I would ask the listeners to just kind of write this one down because it's just a tremendous amount of information. And that is iwillvote.com. iwillvote.com. When you go to that site, very easy to operate, but it provides good insight around mail-in ballots. It walks through the entire process, whether you want to request a ballot online, if you want to request a ballot via email, if you want to request a ballot to be mailed to you, and then it walks through the entire process. And so when you think about safety, particularly in this COVID environment, many of our members, many within the community probably will want to look at that particular opportunity. It gives you great clarity is the part that I want to call out. Because if you think about what 45 has been doing the last few weeks, it's been just a tremendous amount of confusion, a tremendous amount of chaos around how do you do mail-in ballots if there's safety legalities around it. That particular website gives great clarity around it. And I would strongly encourage our members, strongly encourage the community to dial into that regard.
In terms of Zeta Phi Beta sorority and President Valerie Hollingsworth Baker, how are you seeing this, and are you finding any challenges there in terms of getting the word out?
Well, good evening. And I would like to say we in Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, we're working to get the word out. Of course, you know, with COVID as it is, you know, there are challenges, but we find that we're going right into our communities. We are having our webinars, we're having our town hall meetings. We're making sure that we bring our partners on to these calls, to these webinars, so that they can talk about what the challenges are that we face and what we can do about them. We're also very interested with Vote from Abroad, which is an organization that we partner with, because we know that there are many of us right here that need to vote, but there's so many of us that live abroad, over 2.9 million. And with that, we are also partnering with Vote from Abroad to make sure that citizens will be able to get their ballots early, be able to mail them, and be able to mail them to where they should be mailed to, and that this organization will help to spread the word, give us more information on tracking to make sure that you'll be able to get your ballot to where it's supposed to be. And we found that to be very helpful for those abroad, because we have to think about those as well as what we're thinking about at home. Because like I said, over 2.9 million, we need all the votes we can count on, and we must count on those as well.
And this is for anyone who would like to talk about this, but staying with Dr. and Professor, staying with President Cristal and President Baker, what about concerns about the elderly, and as we talk about our older members, and are there any other options that are being offered to them amongst your membership in terms of taking that absentee ballot and perhaps taking it to the boxes yourselves on behalf of your members, and other options that maybe you're making available to them?
You know, and you said this kind of at the beginning when you talked to Reuben and with Rasheeda. We have a tremendous amount of our members that are in a higher age bracket. And so collaboration with our members are critical. Partnering up chapters and members on making sure that's supported. We learned a lot of that even when we were in the midst of the virus early on this summer. But there's also a tremendous amount of resources that are available to our members as well. Particularly when you think about the mail-in ballot and getting that level of comfort for our members. But the things that we've been calling out that we think are most important is really looking to make sure as we go through that mail-in ballot process, understanding the form, collaborating with our members, creating an event around it where we're providing the support, utilizing our peer groups to help drive that expectation as well. But also calling out agencies like our Aging and Disability Resource Centers that are critical within the community. You think about whether it's early voting or mail-in, there's an opportunity for partnerships when the seniors go to the polling place. Make sure that they know that they can vote in private and they can ask for support. Make sure they know when they're in the ballot box that poll workers have been trained to partner up with them and being courageous enough to ask for some type of support. And so the biggest thing is raising the awareness in advance and then creating that level of collaboration as they're partnering up at the ballot box.
Thank you so much for that. I think that this is a really great concern, and especially for our elderly. And I know that a lot of us are looking towards our parents and even in some cases our grandparents, aunts and uncles, in terms of how do we best help them to make their vote count, to get to the polls, to make sure that their ballot gets in and gets counted. This is just such a crucial time, and our efforts as we are helping our elderly as well as our youngins to get out to the polls, and it's a great collaboration that you all are endeavoring. Let's talk about election day voting, and especially in terms of what is going on in the day of COVID-19. Of course, news reports to expect long lines, long hours, waiting times on election day, and concerns about coronavirus are not expected to go anywhere anytime soon. And so let's talk to you, President Marion, and what specific steps is your organization taking to support voters on election day itself, 7 weeks from today?
Well, we're going to do some of the same things that some of the other organizations are doing. We're telling people to come and pack your lunch. I mean, it's going to be a long time that you're going to be there. Come and vote early. It's going to be very important. Many of our chapters are going to provide water, provide sanitizer, provide face masks, and those kinds of things to kind of help with that. We know that every election, as I have lived on this planet, we've heard that this is the most important election of your life. And so we understand that while we may have said that before, this one is certainly consequential. We saw in 2016 that elections have consequences. So we know what's at stake. And so we're encouraging everyone to get out to vote, because we understand that while voting will start in 7 states this week, for the most part, most people are going to vote in person. And we understand that the slogan, vote as if your life depends on it. But during a pandemic, you have to vote as if your life may end with this vote. If you don't come out and practice the measures that have been suggested to us by the CDC and by the Surgeon General and so forth. And so it's important that if we went out and we marched for Breonna Taylor, if we marched for Ahmaud Arbery, if we marched for George Floyd, it's important that we march to the polls on November 3rd and vote like we've never voted before. So much at stake. And I think it's just exciting to see this talk about voting and all of the things that we know they're at stake right now. And so we're pushing people in every way we know how to get out and vote this November 3rd if they don't get a chance to vote early. We're also telling people to check to see if they're registered because we know there's been a lot of purging of the polls. We're also telling people to check to make certain their polling station is still where it was when they left it. Because we saw that in Kentucky, for example, there were over 3,700 polling locations, but a couple of months ago, it was less than 200. So it's very important that you know where to vote and that when you vote, I think is also important to go as early as you can. So those are the kinds of things we're pushing.
Manson, let's talk about the gentlemen, of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity. And how are you preparing your members to vote on election day? Have you devised a checklist, as it were, and all of the things that we may find necessary to take on that day?
Sure. But we are looking at different programs. We're making sure that we are educating and informing our members as much as possible through webinars and other means of our social, I don't know who that was, social media, and also asking them not to just concentrate on our members, but also our inner circles, because of course this COVID thing affects everyone. And so we're asking brothers and everyone to pack your patience. Be prepared that things will not go as smooth as you would want them to be. Letting them to also know that there are going to be some people there that will try your patience. We're going to ask members to carry extra masks. Make sure your cell phones are completely charged before you go. Make sure that someone knows when you're going to go vote, so that so you have that tree of communication between you all. So we're trying to again, inform our members and inform others around as much as possible, because again, you can never have enough information, not based off of the way
Let's talk to you again there, Dr. Marion, about the fear of COVID-19. Are you finding, are you having conversations with people, maybe not even your members, but people around you who are fearful of going to the polls because of the coronavirus, and how are you assuaging those fears?
I don't think that would be anything unusual to see. That's a natural reaction to a pandemic. When you see almost 200,000 people who have died because of COVID-19, then we know this is a very serious virus that we're dealing with. the leaders that you see lead organizations where we've lost many members due to COVID-19. And so it's a serious matter when you talk about this, but also voting is serious.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about many of our grandparents and great-grandparents and others who have died for the right to vote, when we look at the many extremes that people go through to stop us from voting. In 1890, for example, in the state of Mississippi, over 100 white men gathered in the Capitol for a constitutional convention. And the main directive that came out of that constitutional direction was to devise a plan to stop Black men from voting.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have that kind of seriousness about stopping the vote, many I talk to believe that even COVID-19 is being used in ways to prevent us from voting. So certainly people are scared, but I think if they adhere to the requirements that we hear, wearing a face mask, social distancing, come with sanitizer, again, those are the kinds of things that Chapters in Omega are going to provide to the folks standing in line. Come with your lawn chair, come with your medication, come with something to eat. You're going to be there a while. You know what I mean? Because folks are trying to stop you from voting and hope that you'll be intimidated and just say, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't afford to do that in this election.
And I dare say, Dr. Marion, that all the folks that fought so hard and gave their lives for us to vote, this is an opportunity for us to step up and to take on that challenge as well, because this is a life or death situation as well. Let us move to working and volunteering at the polls. This is a big question in terms of the necessity of this. And we're going to talk about that. And first, we have a word from my friends. They're going to talk and these are folks from, of course, as we said before, folks who are members of your illustrious organizations.
Hi, I'm Selena Johnson, proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and I'm encouraging you to learn about volunteering and working the polls.
Hi, I'm Kim Whitley, a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Boom. I am here to remind you that the down ballot races are vital. Now, make sure that you are educated on the candidates and the issues in your community. Yeah, I said that real strong.
Doesn't that make you so proud, President Smith? We're going to talk about working and volunteering at the polls. And so let us go to President Baker and talk about that. And talk about what seniors have played a very big part in working our polls, working on election day. And it's a job that doesn't pay much, if anything. But with this, particularly within the age of the coronavirus and the danger that it poses to older Americans, there's a concern that our polling places may be underserved. As we have seen through the primary season, a lot of the older volunteers and poll workers have chosen not to work this year. And so that has made the lines even longer. It's made the waits and the delays in getting folks through the polling process, through the electoral process. And so let's talk with you, President Baker, and ask you, is your organization doing anything to address the issue of providing or recruiting workers to the that is President Hollingsworth Baker. I'm sorry. Is your organization doing anything to address the issue of providing or recruiting workers for the polling places?
Thank you, Sybil. That's not a problem. I'm glad that you asked that question because Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated has encouraged its members and affiliates to volunteer to serve as poll workers in their respective communities by sharing resources on how to sign up and work on the polls. And even though we know that age old, that we've always had poll watchers and poll workers that were more senior, and now in COVID, that's going to be difficult. So what we're doing, we want to, make sure that we level those risks for our seniors and then find another way to engage others to become poll watchers. So we've appealed to our undergraduates to encourage them to become actively involved in our democracy by serving as poll watchers. And recently, Zeta promoted information that we received from Fair Election Center, who are partners with Work Elections and Power the Polls, and the Campus Vote Project, who's seeking to recruit over 120 college students to serve as work election fellows on college campuses, because we want to target a number of key battleground states. And joining in with this organization, we're able to promote this with our undergraduates as well as and make sure that we get them engaged, as well as our graduate members that will be able to go out, as we encourage them to sign up to help out at the polls. We have to step our pace up, and we're making sure that we have our, as I said, our meetings, our city meetings, our chapter meetings, our town hall meetings, that we're engaging with our members to make sure that they understand that they now have to take up the mantle where our seniors have left off, and they're going to have to make sure that they sign up. So we have places that we're giving them information where they need to go so that they can sign up, or they can definitely sign up online. And we are following them for each chapter. And I'm asking that each chapter at least try to get not only your undergraduate that will become involved, but we will get some of our graduate members, at least 2 from each chapter, to go to their poll to make sure that they have signed up so that they can be a help.
It's just amazing that everything has a season, and as duties and familial duties, as well as your civic duties, usually happen in a season. And now during the age of coronavirus, it's kind of being sped up, but it's the natural way of things, where the older and more seasoned and knowledgeable poll officials will pass their knowledge on to our young people as we encourage them to get involved. We have Justice is on Facebook and says that the NAACP is looking for poll volunteers, and you can go to naacp.org/engage as well. President Smith, let's talk to you about, as a community, what can we do to support the polling places, and especially in our towns where we know that African Americans comprise a significant presence at the polls. Dr. Marion talked about Kentucky, and there are, that was particularly impactful to see those people who have been pushed out of their polling places. But what can we do to support these polling places, and talk about the towns where we know that the African American presence is especially high?
It's really critical that we are there at those polling places and working. I used to chair the Board of Elections in my county, and it's that's one thing you can do. I will say that, although it was the governor's appointee, but participating in the process behind the scenes. When I chaired that board, I realized as soon as I got on that in terms of the poll workers and the people who volunteer for elections in my county, well, in every county, it appears as though less than 1% of the people who work polls are minorities, and even less than that are younger people. I mean, seniors, retired seniors, work the polls because they've got time, and the pay is little, if any. And so when I try to, focus on, what's going on, where are the Black folks? Because here's what happens when you go to a poll, or when you go any place, you want to see someone who looks like you. And when there is fear and concern about voting, when our voters, especially some of those seniors, walk in and see all faces that don't look like them, there's an immediate distrust that comes up, even whether you want it to be or not. It's an automatic because of the world that we live in. Working the polls and being there gives a comfort level to those who are voting to be there and to know that others can vote. Those absentee ballots are counted by volunteers. Those ballots where you don't pull in the circle completely, or you put an X, or you do something wrong and they can't go through the machine. Those are volunteers that are actually working to, in a lot of states, to look at those and make some decisions on it. And they usually have representatives of parties, but the assurance to make sure that we're there and looking at and participating in the process behind the scenes and at the polling places also gives us some reassurance of what's happening, because those poll workers are trained. They get a chance to see the operation behind the scenes. So in addition to being a face that you can see and represent, as you kind of look at each other, here I am, you can also know what's happening behind the scenes. So there's some assurance in terms of how that happens. For our younger folks, it's an opportunity to see the voting process in action. For the rest of us who are able to do that and work, and it takes some time off to try and do that if you possibly can, it gives you an opportunity to see that and provide that assurance and also know what's happening with it. The process for voting and for making sure you're working, we're doing something similar to Soror Hollingsworth Baker in terms of making sure our young folks get involved in the process. Our collegians, I'm so proud of our second vice president and regional reps, just did a video that I previewed and approved yesterday so that our collegiate members are posting videos to try and tell you, please go out and be a poll worker. Some of the process they're using, we know that NAACP is looking for them. We're all looking to make sure we're there. Poll monitors, election judges, as they call them in some states, there to make sure things happen properly are critically important. So working the polls is not just sitting behind that counter necessarily. It really is also monitoring the process in terms of what's happening to make sure that things are fair. We have a responsibility to be in those seats to make sure things are fair, because we can play that role and we need not to shy away from that, because it takes volunteer time for us from something else we could be doing. If we aren't going to be doing this, sooner or later we won't be doing a lot of things, and so we've got to be out front of it.
Wow, put it out there. That's the truth. And shame that devil. Also, folks are still giving us suggestions and information. Those of you on YouTube and Facebook, we thank you. Delphine Hirsch is on Facebook, and she says that poll workers are needed in the cities of Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee as examples. And certainly those are key states, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Look at me knowing my states there. But it is those are key states that there's going to be a lot of business, a lot of activity at the polling places on those days. And so I thank you so much for that, Delphine, and appreciate your participating in that. Let's talk about, this is a topic that we could go on and probably do a whole nother show on as well, but voter suppression and the legal resources that are available. And going to our attorney in the House, let's go to Dr. Glover. And this is one of the most, obviously, I mean, it bears saying and repeating, but it goes without saying oftentimes that this is one of the most contentious election seasons of our lifetime. And as a result, those who seek to make it more difficult for our community to vote. So how, Dr. Glover, is your organization addressing issues of voter suppression and barriers to keep people from being able to vote?
Well, good evening. Thank you. You are so correct. Voter protection is so key this year. We want to ensure that all voters have an equal opportunity to vote and have their vote count. We have to protect and defend the right to vote. So that includes voter registration, that includes absentee ballots, early voting, voting by mail, and voting on election day. So as we know, we believe that election suppression, vote intimidation, they're just, some are more notorious than others. Some of the most notorious methods are the voter ID requirements, when to suppress the vote of people who are people of color, those who don't have don't have an address. They have a post office box. So, we have some things, there are some things that are specifically designed, or at least have the appearance of designing to affect people of color more. So what Alpha Kappa Alpha has done, we have partnered with the National Bar Association with their election protection initiative. And we put out a call for all the lawyers in Alpha Kappa Alpha. So we had 800 to almost 1,000, I believe, that have answered that call. So we plan to be on site to make sure that the votes are indeed protected, because in addition to the ID requirements, that there's the voter purge roll purges, where when you come in, your name is no longer on the roll, and they use the excuse that we're trying to remove duplicate names or remove those who've been deceased, but it largely affects people of color. And then the closure of polling places. You go to your polling place, it's been closed, or it's been combined somewhere else. So a recent poll, a study in USA Today found that the election officials have closed thousands of polling places, and it largely affects people of color. So we know the notorious methodologies that are being employed. And then one that is the godmother of all is the provision of ballot requirements. When you go to the poll and there's no, your name is not on the roll, and they give you provision of ballot. You know, federal laws dictate that if your name's not on the roll, you have to get a provisional ballot. You can still vote and it's held in May until it's counted, once it's confirmed that you are in fact eligible. But the locality sets their own rules and regulations, which means they can count as many as they want to, they can use as many as they want to. So lawyers have to be on board to make sure, just to be there and observe, be ready to file an injunction. They close the door early. You have 50 people standing in line. Somebody to be there ready to file. It's already, we work with NACP and the Reverend Jerry Young with the National Baptist Convention. It's already set up. All you do is just fill it in, go down and file it. When they reduce the hours of instead of coming in, staying open till 7, they may say we'll close at 6 tonight. So all of these are voter suppression methodologies. And then the areas where in Florida particularly, we know how contentious it's going to be in Florida. Florida has this, the felons, the convicted felons who now have the right to vote. And they're trying to make sure that, well, I can't say they're making sure, but right now they have to pay a fine to register to vote. Now, you know what does that sound like anything to you? Does that make remember we couldn't vote until we passed the literacy test?
Right. You tell how many bubbles are in the tub or
poll tax. That's what it is. Poll tax.
So now it's coming back. You have to have money to pay a fine to register to vote. So there are 18 states that have this process. So the lawyers that need to do all of that. But everything is not going to have to be a lawyer. Honestly, it can be anybody who has who wants to sit there and help. But only certain people can go into the courts and do certain things. But the lawyers, the National Bar has had this for years, and we've been working with C.K. Hoffman, who's the president of the National Bar. It's an amazing opportunity to get out there and protect this vote. This election has to be protected.
Let's talk to your fellow attorney, Grant Polmark of Kappa Alpha Psi. Reuben Shelton, certainly this is as has been said, this is a lot of the things that everything old is new again. And we talked about this in the What You Need to Know newsletter about this particular case. There's over 800,000 former felons who have been denied the right to vote, again, by the appellate judge, the appellate system. And the justices said no and agreed with the Republicans until they pay for these fines and court fees. And so let's talk to you, Attorney Shelton, and about if someone suspects that their ability to vote is being blocked. What's your best advice, counselor?
Yeah, poll tax. That's all I can say. We're doing it again. This is a maddening, critical issue because it is hard to believe that 150 years after passage of the 15th Amendment, we are still dealing with this voter suppression issue. It's unbelievable. But a lot of the things that my fellow presidents have said earlier actually apply to what we're talking about now. But if someone suspects that their ability to vote is being improperly blocked, there are some things that you can do. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law, they have a toll-free number that you can call, 866-OUR-VOTE. It's actually 866-687-8683. That's the law. Also, great minds think alike, President Glover. I'm meeting with the National Bar Association president tomorrow morning to talk about their election protection program, and Kappa is going to be fully on board with that as well. But also, we believe that that we need to arm people with weapons, and the weapons that we're going to arm them with is information. So we're partnering with groups like March On's Voter Protection Corps. We're encouraging members in the community to be proactive and learn their rights under the law ahead of time. And I know that's asking a lot for a lot of people. I understand that, but to the extent that you can, go in knowing what your rights are. There's a website called wearemarchon.org. Also in Kappa, we are using a book that's called The Flipping Book, Flipping. And that is a resource for a proactive planning process. And it details all of the laws for the 50 states in the United States. But also, there are local organizations that you can resource when you're having problems at the polls, right? And one huge problem that we don't talk about a lot is voter intimidation. Voter intimidation, where you got folks that don't like us very much. They're sitting out in the parking lots, or they're walking around in front of the polls and legal distance, but they are still trying to intimidate voters from coming in and voting. And that is happening a lot. And as President Smith said, it is so very important to have people who are working those polling places, because they're the ones that are going to be the watchdogs for us. And when they see something is wrong, they can actually assist in correcting anything that's happening at the resource. But local organizations like the Mound City Bar Association in St. Louis, they're doing an election protection thing, and of course the NAACP. These are all things that these are all numbers that we should have on speed dial, so that when we get to the election site and something goes wrong, we can call them up and get this thing started.
And just as we close on this particular topic, Grandpa Mark, do you guys, does your organization provide a list of these numbers, and are these being made available to your members as well?
Yes,
as to the community?
Absolutely. And we're relying on our members in each chapter across the nation to make sure that in their voter registration and voting election drives, that they are supplying that information to members of the community that they serve.
Gotcha.
And we want to encourage them to call that hotline number, because we're in early voting has already started in Michigan. It's going to in 5 states this week. And so we know there's a lot of misinformation that's being told, and there are several complaints already filed, not just lawsuits, but complaints. It's not at that level yet, but there are 22 states that the National Bar has identified as the worst in early voting, and they have various tactics. And so, I mean, we know things about ballots being in the middle of the highway, in somebody's drawer. So those kinds of things we have to make sure we guard against in the early voting process. So the rule is that we have to protect the voter. The 15th Amendment, when we have to protect this right to vote.
Exactly. That's right.
Forewarned is forearmed. Let us move on. Thank you so much for that information. And we're moving on to talk about the down ballot races. President Smith, can you explain to people as an election official about down ballot voting and talk about the importance and the ramifications of down ballot voting throughout the entire ballot?
Absolutely, Sybil. Thank you for the question. And, so Kim Whitley said it well when she said you got to get down and get those down ballots voted. Down ballot voting is voting the entire ballot, from the federal to the state to the local. And typically that ballot is by party. Now, I tell you, there's some interesting statistics on this. Republicans tend to vote a straight party ticket. And when they register, they vote the entire ballot. Democrats, on the other hand, typically, based on the research they have, vote and fall off after the major elections. They don't vote down ballot. They don't make sure that that happens. Now, I have to tell you, this past Sunday, a good alpha man, Reverend Freddie Haynes, who I go to on Sundays at Friendship West in Texas, said something on Sunday that really, I think, tied to this topic. He said, we live in an era when your life expectancy is not determined by your genetic code, but by your zip code.
Amen.
Now, think about that for a moment, but that's so true. It's not only true for the census we talked about, but if you don't do down ballot voting, you're not taking care of those local elections. And quite frankly, your life expectancy will be determined by your zip code and not your genetic code. All politics are local. And I think we need to understand how important it is to make sure that what happens in your local elections affects your daily life. Local candidates affect the quality of your life in terms of engaging what you do in your communities. That's a day-to-day thing. The people that were elected in those seats for congressional seats, that makes a huge difference for us in terms of the presidency, and those elections are obviously critically important. But if there is not a good Congress behind who's elected, as you know, things get stifled, and we see that every day. Voters have to make sure they're doing research on every candidate in every race, particularly in judges, in terms of what happens there, especially right now when so many of them are up for election. Delta Sigma Theta has been holding a lot of virtual candidate forums and inviting a mix of candidates because we have to make sure they're all at least represented to talk to constituency. But knowing who a candidate is extremely important to not leave that ballot locally blank. I know when we had our primaries here, I did a lot of research, looking in the paper, going online, looking to see what the candidates for, what they supported, how they looked, all those kind of things to make sure we understand it. The other thing about local elections and making sure that we get empowered in our communities is that we have to make sure that it's an opportunity for those that are interested in being in politics to get a chance to get the experience at that local level. You're preparing for that election and you're running your community. And running a community makes a huge difference in terms of what happens. So that training is extremely important. You know, one of the things that we're doing at Delta, we recently announced a new 501c4 so that we can, in fact, endorse candidates. But one of the other things we're doing is training people to run for office, because that's important. You got to be at that table. You know, Shirley Chisholm said, if you don't have a seat at the table, you know, pull up a folding chair. But making sure that we're engaged in the local elections, not only by voting, but being represented and being at the table at the same time is critically important. Don't just stop at that top election. Look down that ballot. See who else is running. Get educated about who's running, because that makes a difference in the community where the main focus of what happens in your lives every day is going to happen.
Absolutely. And President Liberty, I know that you and the ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated are also involved in that discussion as well. And talking a little bit more, if you could talk about the importance of encouraging our citizens to get involved in those local races. And they say, well, I don't care who's president. Well, but there is something you care about. There is an issue. There's something on your street. There's something around the corner that is not right. And you want to make a change in that. Are you having those discussions, President Liberty?
Yes, we are having those discussions. And I believe one of the things that is really key there is making sure that you take the discussions down to a real level. And when I say a real level, it's having those conversations, not only with our members, but those around the community that Sigma Gamma Rho actually engages in with. I believe my members are definitely going to vote and understand the importance of downvoting. But what we're trying to do is do more outreach to those who may not understand. The person who says that from a local judge, do you understand that who you vote as a local judge or put in those offices determines whether or not you go to jail or what your sentence is for a driver's license violation? Do you understand that your council member makes decisions that impact you on whether or not, sometimes whether you wear a mask or whether you're required to wear a mask during COVID? School board members, when it comes to your child's education, being an organization founded on the principle of education. We know the importance of making sure that our children are educated and sowing into that generation, but there's members, we vote those people in. And then something that really hits home, I believe, for all of us holistically, if we look at what just happened with George Floyd, with Breonna Taylor, we waited on prosecutors to make decisions. Who determines who those prosecutors are?
Right.
Who determines who that police chief is? Who determines who the head of the state highway patrol is? We do. We own those decisions. That's why it's important for us to so locally and for us to educate our members, as well as, like I said, our general community to understand that these are the things that hit home. I'm not just going to tell you to vote down the ballot. I'm going to give you the reasons why.
President Liberty, staying with you in terms of educating our people, do you provide the opportunity to talk about some of these issues with people in the community in terms of perhaps not suggestions, but to talk, as you have done, but to talk one-on-one or in a group setting about the importance? Because certainly this has been an incredible civics lesson for our communities in seeing, as you mentioned, about Breonna Taylor and about George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, who was, killed by people who were involved with the police department. Talking about these issues with our people and our young people especially, are we having those discussions and talking about the difference that can be made with people who are in those positions?
These are active discussions that we're having. And as this new administration kicked off, because I'm just 45 days in office, as this new administration kicked off, we fell right into, we got to get this voter engagement up. And so with that, we have planned a series of different webinars and workshops and forums. We're inviting personalities in, some heavy hitters, because we have to hit some of our people through entertainment in some ways, if you know what I mean, right? These forums are great. It's the Divine Nine, but sometimes we have to bring some voices and some power from communities that we wouldn't expect to speak to our young people. And so we are bringing some things like that in these next 40 days as we lead to the election to bring that to the forefront. We also are giving our members communication through our weekly communications about their Secretary of State websites, as well as how to vote, necessarily how to vote, but where they find their actual local ballots so that they can study the candidates.
That's so important, and we have to just keep keeping that information. And even when we think that people know, it doesn't hurt to be reminded, right?
Absolutely.
As we talk about this, it is. We're going to take a time out, and we are going to hear from some more of the illustrious members of your fraternities and sororities and my good friends.
Greetings, beloveds. I am Ian Levan Zant, a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and I am reminding all of my HBCU families to get out and vote. Because you matter, your vote matters.
Hey fam, Roland Martin here, life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated for the last 31 years. And listen, we all know that Black Lives Matter and we all must go to the polls, which means that we must do our part to make sure that your vote counts. So go to vote.org to make sure you have not been purged. If you have not registered, you can do so there as well. Plus you can fill out the census all in one stop. You've got one vote, so use it.
Hi, I'm Ashley Bell, proud member of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. And I'm encouraging you to support the movement to make sure Black men get out and vote.
I don't care who has been speaking between Iyanla and now, but I always want to speak like that and say, welcome back, beloveds. Love that woman. We're going to talk about beloved HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and talking about activating those HBCU voters. And Dr. Glover, let's go back to you as president of one of those beloved HBCUs. Let's talk about activating them, and of course, represent a very important voting bloc. They are engaged, as you know, in politics and social issues. What do you see as their role in the political landscape in this age of COVID-19, coronavirus?
Well, thank you. There is probably no part of American life that COVID-19 has not affected. And so HBCUs have been equally as affected. And this includes when, where, how students can vote in the November election. So this pandemic has reshaped the 2021 school year plans. Some are open, some are not, some are online. So we tell students, one, register to vote. Registration closes on October 4th and 5th in so many states. And by October 15th, it's closed in 35 states. So we say, if you haven't registered, register at home. Use your home address, because using a post office box or school address might be problematic and might present a challenge of some sort in this type of election. Because we know that every ballot that can be challenged will be challenged. So we don't want to make it easier for the students not to have a challenged ballot. This is a very important voting block because this is the 18 and 24-year-olds represent probably, I think it was either 18 or 19% of the voting electorate. And that is absolutely significant. So what we have done, we've asked each of what Alpha Kappa Alpha has done, we've asked for some type of voter engagement activity to be held on each HBCU campus, whether it's voter registration, voter mobilization, voter education, some type of voter engagement activity be held on each campus. And each president of HBCU, and you mentioned I'm president of Tennessee State University, so I make sure that I'm emailing all the students this week and urge them to vote by mail. We're asking all the college presidents, email each and every student and ask them to vote, because we're to make it clear that we're counting on the students' votes, and every student has a duty to vote, just as every adult has. We're asking, and as we know, students vote for policies that make them feel good. They think that pertain to them, like educational policies. When they hear that someone's going to cancel student loan debt, or they're going to make it more affordable for college, that triggers their interest. That inspires them. So you have to have something to make them think that they're going to be better off. The economy. They want to make sure they have a job, or they can pay back their student loan debt, or something. And what surprised me in the study we had was climate control. I mean, the climate policy was third on the list because students seem to think that their future's at stake, that with the towns burning and the fields flooding, that's going to affect them. And if we don't have the new technology and the development, the talent that's going to mitigate the effects of climate change. So we have to vote for something that they really feel like is going to affect them in their daily lives. But each campus has to do something to make sure they're getting the vote out, their voter mobilization, partner with someone, help us get the vote out, and have different parties, different virtual activities, have giveaways to get the students to get out to vote.
Dr. Ward, certainly life on an HBCU campus, you are no stranger to that. And then as president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, are you seeing plans to activate the HBCU voters, and especially those who are not on campus?
I'm very encouraged. And one of the things I think is important, if you look at all of our organizations, the majority of our organizations were founded on historically Black colleges. So each of our presidents and those that were founded on PWIs, we were founded at Cornell University. We understand that in the 99 historically Black colleges with some over 200,000 students, we know that it is important that those students be engaged. What I am extremely pleased about is the activism that's happening on HBCU campuses all over the country. And so the students are using social media. They are having virtual candidate forums. They are partnering with alumni chapters. When I talk to our college members, they're not only staying on their college campuses, but they're also being involved in activities on the campus area surrounding their respective campuses. So this is something that we are real pleased about. We have college students who are planning and conducting candidate forums where they're doing opposition research on candidates. While we have some students that are virtual, we have some that are on campus. I am just pleased at the creativity and the innovation of the students. We've got students who are participating in Black Lives Matter one day and holding voter registration drives and doing all types of activities, being involved in the census. I was talking to one of our leaders today, and they're planning a concert that will be a drive-in concert. And what they're going to do at this drive-in concert is register people to vote. And also, as it's been said by several of my colleagues already, they are planning to vote, of course, vote, but work on election day at the polls. They are volunteering to work at the polls on election day. But then also what is so encouraging about our HBCUs is that these students are prepared for leadership in the future. And I think That is key, as it's been said. Many of our organizations, I know in Alpha Phi Alpha, we started in the 1930s. A voteless people is a hopeless people. So we are training our collegiate members to be involved in civic engagement as a part of our national program. One of the other rewarding things I think we need to take away from this conversation is that there is among the National Panhellenic Council a collegiate council. So the vice presidents of our various organizations are working together and organizing, and see that they have a collective influence when they work together. One of the proudest moments that I've seen is, particularly as chairman of the Council of Presidents, is when you can see on social media, regardless of fraternity affiliations, you have Kappas and Omegas and Deltas and Zetas and Sigmas and Iotas working in the community together. And I think that's a powerful statement about where we are at this point in American history, that our community has said that we know what's at stake. This is a crystal clear election. We know what the issues are, and we know what the representation is, as it has been clearly articulated, coming from the highest level of government with regard to issues of race, racial division, and also issues that have a negative impact on the African-American community. So I'm very encouraged with what our historically Black college students are doing, what our administrators are doing. As a former president of St. Augustine's, it was during my tenure that every election as president, I marched with the students to the polls. Nice. Because it was important for the president to exemplify the importance of registering people to vote. And I know many presidents require their students to register to vote as a part of their orientation. Now that we are in this COVID-19, the message that we're sending to our collegiate leadership is that make sure you're registered at home. And if you've registered on the campus and you're now at home, change your registration and make sure that you are duly registered, because on election day, we need every vote that we can. I'm just encouraged and very pleased about what I see happening on historically Black college campuses and with our collegiate members. I'm extremely pleased.
Well, I got my education on historically Black colleges and universities under Tom Joyner. I was a PWI kid, and I just want to give a shout out to those who are at the PWIs and are going out there and getting together and to form a coalition to get out the vote. So just a shout out to those of us who are graduates of or still attending the predominantly white institutions.
One of the things that's happening, Sybil, is that students at predominantly white institutions are also being very active on their campuses as well. So you have Black student organizations who are engaged in voter registration. And the real critical point here with the Divine Nine is it doesn't matter what campus you're on, HBCU or PWI, the activism that's happening within those various chapters of the Divine Nine is so important. So I'm very pleased at what they are doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, you hear that, Northwestern? Get out there and vote. You may not be doing much on the football field, but you can get out and vote. Just saying. So now let us move to an area that is near and dear to all of us, and it's in the headlines each and every day. Of course, I'm talking about the groups who are bringing to the attention of the rest of the world about the importance of Black Lives Matter. And Dr. Marion, let's talk to you a little bit about that and talk about these young people who are out there who are marching, as most of you have talked about today. But how are we harnessing that energy of this movement to encourage voting in November and beyond?
Well, I think we're sticking with our message that we've been talking about earlier tonight, where if you march for Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and you don't march to the polls to vote, then there's a real problem with that, because that's where you're going to be able to do some things in terms of power. What we've seen today is not uncommon for many of us that are talking here tonight in this town hall. Many of the presidents are from the South. You have myself in Jackson, Mississippi. You have Dr. Glover from Jackson, Mississippi. You have Mike Cristal, he's from the Delta. You have Brother Ward, who's from North Carolina. And we have Beverly, who's from Georgia. So you have some folks that have seen racism all of our lives. And so when we see what's happening now, we're reminded so much of things in the past. When I saw George Floyd on that ground, I was particularly moved and thought about Emmett Till. And I thought about how Emmett came to Mississippi and supposedly flirted with a white woman who years later recanted and said he didn't. But nevertheless, her husband and brother came to his uncle's house, made him carry a 75-pound cotton gin fan to the banks of the Tallahatchie River, made him strip down where he had no clothes on, beat him damn near to death, gouged one of his eyes out, shot him in the head, and then wrapped him in barbed wire to that cotton gin fan and threw him in the Tallahatchie River when he was 14 years old. We've been seeing this for many decades. When we saw those men on the back of the truck with Ahmaud Arbery, we knew, if you're in the South, you knew what that meant. You knew what was about to happen. And so we see young folks energized. These young folks today aren't playing. They're willing to die for this cause. They're willing to kill for this cause. They're willing to fight for it. And so our job in our organizations is to keep them and everyone else energized to go vote. This is your opportunity to exert some power over this process, be it the presidential election or be it down balloting. You need to not miss this opportunity to vote. Your vote is so important. That's why folks are working so hard to suppress it. We talked about voter suppression earlier. And in Mississippi, I would always hear stories about you get to the polling place and there'd be a watermelon sitting there and your test would be to guess how many seeds was in it. Or a cucumber there, guess how many bumps are on it. Or a bar of soap, guess how many bubbles are in it. That was the question you had to answer correctly, which you never could before you were allowed to vote. And so this voting is very serious. We know people have died for our right to vote, and we have to stay energized throughout this whole process to make that happen.
Dr. Ward, let's come back to you and talk about this and talking about the social and racial climate and the impacting the voting and the mission of the members of the Divine Nine. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think without a doubt, you've heard tonight, and the audience has heard, that the Divine Nine is united. We are collectively united in a way that says this election, and not only this election, but what happens after the election. Politics is 365 days of the year. So we are very committed to making sure that we are united and not only encouraging our members to vote, but the communities that we serve. 2.5 million members of the Divine Nine, but the influence of our organization multiplies into the millions when you talk about our local chapters and individual members. But I think there's something that's very critical that must be said tonight, and that is that we support Black Lives Matter. Because what Black Lives Matter is doing is following in a tradition that is very much rooted in our organizations, in historically Black colleges and the African American community. We must not forget that it was students at Howard University who picketed and protested about lynchings that was happening in America. We must not forget that it was students at Shaw University in 1960 that gathered from all over the South and some from the North to form the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, better known as SNCC. What we must do, number one, is make certain that the narrative that some people are using to misrepresent Black Lives Matter and misrepresent the true issue of what we're all concerned about. And that's the violent and brutal murder and attack of young Black people, men and women. And so we've got to say to these young people, finish the march and march to the polls on November 3rd. But then after November 3rd, be engaged. So for example, here in North Carolina, when we talk about down ballot, we have in Yvonne Lewis Holley, a candidate who's running for lieutenant governor.
Right.
We have an African-American female who's Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Sherry Beasley. We've got to vote all the way down the ballot. In Virginia, we have a fraternity brother who's running, who's a medical doctor and an attorney, who's running for Congress by the name of Cameron Webb. In the state of Georgia, another Alpha brother running for public office to be a United States Senator. So we've got to help people understand that this election is crystal clear. So when we have a president who stands and talks about law and order, as Frater Marion says, we know what law and order means, and it doesn't mean anything good for our people. And so what I say to our members on a daily basis, at our general convention last year, I declared war on Jim Crow. I declared war on supremacy, because what we've got to say to these young people, you've got to continue to carry the torch, because the torch has been passed to us. You look at what our good Sigma brother, Congressman Lewis, said to us so well, that good trouble is good. But remember, it was a Delta lady in Shirley Chisholm who said the good fight in 1972. And it was Martin Luther King who said that there had been a bad check given to us and we wanted, but it was an Omega in Jesse Jackson who ran for president. So we've got to help people understand the history and the legacy of our people. And racial bigotry and racism is alive and well. And we've got to say to these young people, no, we're not taking any backward steps. We're going to march onward and upward always. And so when you have these rallies and you talk about Senator Harris, a graduate of Howard University, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and you use derogatory language towards her, then you've taken on the whole Panhellenic Council.
All right.
You've taken on the whole community. And the way that we are going to solve the issue is, my mother used to tell us, I can show you better than I can tell you. And the way we're going to show them is on election day, we're going to vote these folks out that want to go back to 1995 and 1945, because we're not going back to those days anymore. It's a new day. We're going to, and that's where we're going, with some new leadership. And the Divine Nine is going to lead the way. I'm so proud of all of our Divine Nine members, for what they do all over this nation and all over the world.
They have a collection.
That's right.
We have a collection right now.
Hey, Frater Ward. It was a good Kappa man that stood right next to Martin Luther King, right?
And that is spoken like a true chairman of the Divine Nine.
We got it.
And President Smith, I think you might not have to not taking away anything from Pastor Freddie Haynes, but I think you got your Sunday sermon right here on this Tuesday. You got a history lesson and you got a sermon. I think we're good to go. We have our marching orders and everything, right?
I think so too. We're good. Another good alpha man. There you go.
That's right. And parenthetically, Dr. Marion, when you're talking about Emmett Till, there is an effort in Chicago, Emmett Till's home, to make the last place he saw his mother the home where he grew up, to make it into a historical place in the city of Chicago. They are just starting the process of that. And God bless the name and memory of Mamie Till Mobley, who fought so long and hard for people to understand what happened to her son and vowed to never let that happen again. And I'm really proud of my hometown. There's not a lot I'm proud about Chicago these days, but I'm very proud of the fact that they are working to make that a historical site. Let us move on. And also, while we're talking about things in the news, for those who need a little news update, because that's what we do, and What You Need to Know newsletter, if you have not heard today, there has been an agreement in the civil lawsuit brought by the mother of Breonna Taylor, Tamika Palmer, and there has historic, according to good Omega man, that would be attorney Ben Crump, and has said that the $12 million that the city of Louisville has settled with Breonna's mother may be the highest, the greatest number for a Black woman, especially. But in their talk about this, in their press conference today, they want people to remember that this is a start. They still want those policemen charged. They want the Attorney General Daniel Cameron to do his job and to bring those men before a court. And they want people to remember and to continue to say her name as they seek justice for Breonna Taylor. And that is so strong today in listening to all you good women and men talk about the things that we are doing and how we can make these changes in our community, in the down ballot, and all of these things are a big part of this. And of course, talking about Black Lives Matter. So as we get to the end of our program, let's talk about the important issue of getting our Black men to vote. This is not something that we would think would be a problem. What it is a problem for those still trying to figure out how 14% of the Black men who voted in 2016 voted for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is very proud of this. As you are probably hearing on the news these days, he is using some of those Black men like Herschel Walker, Georgia State Representative Vernon Jones in commercials to keep those Black men engaged and to vote for Donald Trump again. But by the same token, Mr. Biden is using his resources as well, and using people like Congressman Cedric Richmond and others to in their conversations in barbershops, Black-owned barbershops around the country. Specifically, they've been in Milwaukee as well as Detroit and talking about the issues. So as we talk about this particular issue of Black men voting, let's go to you, President Manson, and talk about the disproportionate number of Black men who are formerly incarcerated. Are you seeing this as a way to include, are you seeing a way to include them in the political process, even if they are not yet eligible to vote, as we talked about in Florida, especially?
Yes, we are. What's going on is, and first let me say that we as Black men, we have to understand that we have to watch what I like to say, the okie doke. They want our vote. A lot of times we will hear the news, oh, not that many Black people voted, or at least not that many Black men voted. But they understand that you may not get that same kind of low turnout now after all the issues that have been going on. So I want us to make sure that we're clear that you cannot buy my vote, regardless which side you plan on voting on, because again, that's where they're going with a lot of this. Hey, I've got 14% Black male voting that voted my way, as if to say, okay, great, the rest of the percentages will follow you next time. That's not necessarily how it works. Right. So we definitely want to make sure that we're aware on that. But back to your question, yeah, for those members or those brothers who've been incarcerated and lost the right to vote, you can still engage them. Just because someone does not have the right to vote does not mean that he doesn't have the right to understand. So I'll never forget, we were in down south near Selma, and we were at the state headquarters there, and there was a man out there who was marching by himself with a bullhorn, and was listening, was reaching everyone who could hear him with his bullhorn, telling them to vote, get out there. He was engaging. And when I talked to him, of course, he unfortunately told me that he does not have the right to vote, but that doesn't stop him from influencing others. And so our brothers, our family, our people who have been incarcerated and don't have the right to vote, we can still reach them. We can still teach them the differences between, what each candidate has to offer, and making sure that they can get out there, maybe not with their bullhorn, but they can get out there with their bullhorn and sign and tell people how encourage them to vote. I mean, these people still have families and friends and sons and daughters. They have the right to vote. So yes, to say all that, yeah, we still need to be able to engage our members and family, friends, and loved ones who have been incarcerated and now out.
And thank you, Grand Polaris. And let's take this to you, President of Phi Beta Sigma, President Micheal Cristal. Tell us more about the initiative that fraternities are doing in October regarding getting Black men to vote.
Yeah, I'll answer that, but I just really I think it's important that we learn from what occurred in 2016 and the attractiveness that you said in respect to the disproportionate amount of Black men who voted for 45. You know, we didn't know a whole lot in 16. If you think about a businessman, you think about leading your household and finding a level of attraction there, you probably could see why there might have been a disproportionate. But boy, if you look at 16 to 20, we have learned a lot. And when we factor that in, then we start thinking about now, how do we galvanize our community to really respond to what we saw? 47% of Black men voted, 55% of African-American women voted. And so how do we galvanize our community? So what Phi Beta Sigma is doing is we've really taken a three-pronged approach. So it's really rooted in messaging. And, you know, when you think about messaging, you think about how do we make a connection with our members? How do we make a connection within our community? And I love what President Smith said and the rest of the team have said today. It's not about that action, but it's also about the down ballot. And I thought Rasheeda did a great job of calling out how important it is for that city council, that school board, how those elections play a critical role in our lives, in many cases more so than what happens nationally. But we also think about visual cohesiveness. And we know as African-American men, we have a responsibility to role model. We're talking about vote T-shirts on. We're asking our members to really cascade that across. And then the last one, which we think is important, and it's all rooted in connecting with the African-American male community. And it's all galvanizing around events. September the 18th, we know that's National Black Voter Day. How do we really get out there and register African-American men then? And then for us, on September 26th, we have a National Sigma Day of Service. And the centerpiece of those activities are going to be voter registration, and specifically, how do we connect again within the African-American community? And so, yes, we saw a disproportionate in 2016. Our goal in 2020 is to really elevate that engagement among African-American men in a higher way.
That's exciting, and it is so important. I hope that everyone has taken so much away from it. I know that I have, and I'm a longtime voter in Chicago. We vote early and often, so I understand that. But it's been a very empowering session, and I'd like to thank you all for participating in this. Also, I'd like for our viewers who are with us today to go to blackvotersmatter.org also for voting information. And also, as we are getting close to the end here, I would like all of our audience to share this video with their circle of family and friends to watch later. Don't wait for Thanksgiving, it'll be too late. But get folks together and get them to to really understand the issues that you all have brought to the forefront as you have talked about educating and activating, motivating, and getting folks out to volunteer, as well as to help people get to the polls and to get to the polls themselves, and then also to talk about registering. If we could just get a quick opportunity for each of you, if you'd like to say a quick goodbye to your members as I thank you. And so, Dr. Ward, you have taken us to church. So I don't know how you follow what you just gave us, but
we just have to pass the plate around.
Yeah. Election.
Well, the main point I want to leave tonight, that it's not saying hello to the alphas. It is the collective of all of us working together. So that's the message that I want to leave, is that it doesn't matter what your colors are. It doesn't matter what year you were founded. The only color that I tell people that matters is black, because in this country, under this current administration, you are guilty as charged based on the color of your skin. And we've got to reverse that and make sure that democracy really works for all people. And so I say to our audience, go out and vote like your life depended on it, because it does. Yeah. And a voteless people is truly a hopeless people. So it's wonderful to be with you tonight, Sybil, and thank you for what you do to uplift and educate our community with knowledge, because we got to be in the business of sharing knowledge and not propaganda, and knowing the difference between propaganda and true facts and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Everett Ward. I want to thank you, President and Chief Executive Officer of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Dr. Glenda Glover, to the Grand Polemarch of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, that's Attorney Reuben Shelton, and to the President of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Dr. David Marion, President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Honorable Beverly Smith, the President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, the Honorable Micheal Cristal, President of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the Honorable Valerie Hollingsworth Baker, and off to a great start there. Also to the President of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, the Honorable Rasheeda Liberty, also off to a great start. And the Grand Polaris of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, the Honorable Andre Manson. I thank you all so much for being a part of history and for taking us on this trip as we continue our journey and towards a better day, November 4th. November 3rd, obviously, is voting day, but on November 4th, it's going to be a brighter day.
Brighter day.
It is.
I would also like to thank folks who played such a big part in making this happen. Dr. Marion, thank you so much for all of your help in making this happen. To Sheila Eldridge for her publicity machine. And by the way, Sheila, congratulations on the Salute Them Awards that we saw over the weekend, and more to come. To Pat Bailey for her marketing expertise. Please check out her website, ladies and men. It's called sheageswell.com. I appreciate all of their help and all of the folks that made this possible, and especially my team. I could not have done this. We would not be here. We'd be sitting on the phone somewhere, maybe connecting each other by phone to have this conversation. But we have Cherie White, who is just invaluable. We have our young techie, Chickadilly, and to the one and only Yolanda Starks White and her better half, a good alpha man himself, Ward White. Thank you all so very much for making this happen, and I can't wait to see the fruits of your labors and our labors. So thank you all, and I also thank my friend John Murray. I did not. And Tom Joyner, wherever you are, I hope we made you proud tonight. We thank you all very much. Now let's get out there and do what we need to do. Let's
Thank you, Sybil. Thank you, Sybil.
Thank you, Sybil.
Thank you, Sybil.
Thank you, Sybil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.